Hey ladies, and welcome back to today's Bible study. We are in the book of Ecclesiastes and we are on chapter 7. So chapter 6 was just the vanity of riches, especially when you don't get to use it, whether other people use it up or whatever reason that people are not able to enjoy their blessings, and that only God knows what is good for this life because Solomon doesn't know what comes next. So now we are on chapter 7. Let's get right into it. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. Well, he's starting in heavy, I suppose, because he finished off chapter 6 with a very similar feeling of discouragement, vanity, meaningless. He's still feeling that way at the start here, and he says, you know what, it's better just to have a good reputation, and the fact that he thinks death is better than life is just mind-boggling. So to have a good reputation is better than precious ointment. Is like smelling good, or it could be even looking good, anything like that. He's saying it's better to have a good reputation. My commentary is saying no matter how sweet smelling your perfume, it can't make up for a foul smelling reputation. Oof. So yeah, reminder to work on your character over the appearances. And there's also a good correlation here with Proverbs 22:1, where it says a good name over great riches. It's a very similar thing. And then he says the day of death is better than birth. Perhaps he can be thinking, well, once you've done it all, you've done all of life. I suppose there's that mystery of what's next, whereas at birth, we know that there's going to be a whole life of suffering as you come into the world, if he's looking at it from a pessimistic point of view. Obviously, from our perspective, knowing what we know about Jesus, we can also kind of understand this because Paul says the same thing, doesn't he? He says in Philippians that he has the struggle between wanting to be in the flesh and producing fruit for his labor, and then wanting to be with Christ and obviously pass away in the flesh. There's that battle. Obviously, Solomon didn't know about the future and the hope we have to come after death, but even he's still kind of deep down, it's like he knew that there's something more after we pass. Maybe he knew that. Maybe he just thinks, oh, it's the end of suffering. I don't know. It's something to think about. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. So the house of mourning is like a funeral, and the house of feasting could be like a party. So he's saying actually funerals, they kind of hit home. It reminds you of the fragility and mortality that we have. It might stir people to live differently. They might go, do you know what, life is so short, we need to make the most of it. Whereas he's saying perhaps feasting and indulging is just a distraction from reality. And there's a great connection with Psalm 90. There's a prayer that asks God to help us number our days so that we can help apply our hearts to wisdom. It helps us to see things in a clearer perspective when we realize the mortality of life. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. He's in a mood right now. He is really he was somewhere heavy when he was writing this. Sorrow is better than laughter. I suppose it's very similar to the funeral and the feasting. I suppose maybe he's saying the sadness of sorrow could soften and humble our heart, which can create wisdom for us. That's in 2 Corinthians, where godly sorrow works repentance to salvation. So it's a godly sorrow, not just I'm depressed and that being depressed is better than being happy. I don't really think that's what he's saying here. But we get wisdom from our sorrow. Whereas laughter, again, it's fleeting, it's temporary, it could be a distraction. And I suppose in long term there is more wisdom in mourning, which is very deep, to be honest. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. And this kind of summarizes everything we've said so far, where in order to be wise, you need to keep that death and eternity in mind. It's the fools who just chased pleasure and they just try and be distracted, like by eating and laughing and having parties, and it's all just a distraction from the reality that there is going to be an end to life, and we do need to be aware of that. And wow, now we know that there's eternity in Christ, but in order to get that eternity with Christ, you have to have found him in this life. And putting that whole section all together, I suppose, thinking about the end, thinking about going to funerals instead of parties, all of that, thinking about your mortality, reminds us of what is important that our days are numbered, that we're not here just to have a party. We are here to find Christ and gain that eternity with him. And in doing so, obviously, help others, love others. But we need to live with an eternal perspective, knowing what we know now that he didn't know then. But he had a hope, didn't he? Okay, let's keep going. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This is also vanity. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger riseth in the bosom of fools. Let's stop there, because this is very much written like Proverbs, where every line is like its old bold statement. But if I go through it one by one, I really feel like it's going to take me so long. So I want to try and clump things together. So listening to the rebuke of the wise, obviously, yes. If you're going to be corrected by someone, you want it to be by someone who is wise and knows what they're talking about, rather than just to be entertained by a fool. As I said before, laughter and parties and everything, all that is loud and it's enjoyable at the time, but it is fleeting, it's very short-lived, and it goes very quickly. It's like a crackling of thorns under a pot. It produces very little heat, and there's no substance there. And wisdom is more than just achievements or accomplishments. In fact, there are people who are really intelligent but may not be wise. So wisdom really is about, I believe, is a divine spiritual thing where you're making informed decisions, you're applying divine truths to your life, and you're allowing yourself to be led by God, because he's obviously the ultimate pinnacle of wisdom. So if we're being led by God, we are going to make more wise decisions. And then it says again, better is the end than the beginning, like death over birth. And I suppose we can look at it in the sense that once something has finished and ended, that completion, we see the fruit of it. We see a completion. I suppose you can think of it like a house. The end is once it's been built. It's much nicer than the beginning, where you've just got the plans and the blueprint, because it's unsure of what's going to happen. You have a plan, but it doesn't always go to plan. And in that sense, yes, the end is better than the beginning. There's so much unknown in the beginning, whereas the end, we've got the fruit. We've seen what has been produced. And it's better to be patient than proud. Better to be humble than prideful. Always. Pride always comes before a fall, as we know. And it's better to be patient, because anger is a folly thing, you know. Having a quick temper is a sign of a fool as well. Real wisdom has self-control and patience and calmness. So we need to be careful to not be hasty, to get angry and wound up. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is a profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defence, and money is a defence, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. So when people look at the former days, being nostalgic, which we all can do at times, it can blind us to what is to come and what possible opportunities there are in front of us. If we're spending all our time looking in the rearview mirror, we're not seeing what is ahead. So I think that's a really important one, especially when we long for the old days of how they were. We are missing out on what is coming. I'm going to highlight that because I can be really nostalgic, and this is a good reminder that that is not wise. I'm going to have to remind myself of this. And so wisdom with an inheritance, so wisdom with any material resources and things is good, because that can provide you blessings and security. But also, unlike money and resources, wisdom can preserve life. Wisdom gives life. It's not the money that gives life. There are people who have plenty of money and no wisdom that will squander everything and might lose their life. But wisdom is key here. It is more than money. It's better to be wise. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? So, Yah is completely sovereign. What he allows, whether it's good or bad in our eyes, we can't change it. If he's made it crooked, that's it. We can't make it straight. And I think there's something in Isaiah where he straightens our crooked paths, which is the opposite. So the opposite is true as well. If our paths are crooked, he can straighten it. But we can't straighten a crooked path ourselves, you know. In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider, God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. So yes, we've got prosperity, blessings, and adversity, both ordained by God, and we shouldn't allow either of them to lead to being arrogant or to being hopeless or anything like that. All things work together for the good of those who love him. And he's done it so that in the end, we won't find anything after God, because God is the beginning and the end. There is nothing else after him. And so the good and the bad keeps us humble as well. So we are given blessings because he loves us, but we also have to deal with adversity as well to realize that there is nothing after him. All things I have seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. Be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Be not over much wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why should thou die before thy time? It is good that thou should take hold of this. Yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. Yeah, we see this too. We see where there's good people that suffer or die young, and then we see that there's wicked people that have really long, prosperous, wicked lives. We see this a lot. Even today, it's something that riles us up. Why do the good suffer and then the wicked prosper? And yeah, life seems unfair. And this is a tension point that he's sensing, that there has to be something more. There has to be another judgment after death. There is no way that this can be all there is, because then there is no justice. And that is something that he's sensing, that there needs to be a judgment after we die, the final judgment, which there is. We know now, but he didn't know that at the time, but he knew that there had to be, because otherwise it's unjust. And then we're reminded to not be too much of either side, have balance. It says extremes of self-righteousness or extremes of wisdom could be destructive. It could cause a lot of pride. So to not be excessively wise, that seems extreme. Like, well, why shouldn't you be too wise? And I think what he's saying here is talking about going beyond what God is asking. And this one could be mirrored in how the Pharisees acted, where they put their own standards into God's standards and they became self-righteous in that sense. They thought they were being really, really wise, but that is beyond what God asked. And obviously we shouldn't be overly wicked either. You don't want to go the other end of the spectrum, because sin has consequences, and if you're overly wicked you could cut your life short, depending on what sins are being practiced. And so the balance is found in the fear of God. That helps us from being too much of one thing and too much of another. The fear of God is ultimate wisdom, isn't it? So we should don't go overboard in one way or overboard in another. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. For there is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. Oof! Obviously, wisdom is far greater than all the strength of like a military power. It's always better to be wise than worry about your strength and power. Just look at David and Goliath. Goliath was a massive giant. He was the most fearful warrior, but David went in with just his little stone, and he had wisdom because he had the fear of the Lord, and he trusted that Lord would be with him, and he was. Whereas the Goliath, he focused and put all his faith into his strength and presence, and that was not enough. Here is a universal truth, that there isn't a just man on the earth that does good and doesn't sin. All have sinned. Romans 3, everyone has sinned. Obviously that's not a license to persist in it, because that would contradict what he says above. So why do you want to destroy yourself? You don't want to be foolish, and sinning is foolishness because it goes against God. But we are to live that balanced life with the fear of God. Basically the fear of God is going to resolve everything. It will stop you being over the top, wise beyond what God has given us, and it will stop you falling into foolish sin. Also take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. For oftentimes also thine own heart knoweth that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. Yes, this one I need. because people are careless with their words. This one's very important. I like this one. So, okay, we need to not be overly sensitive to other people's words, because we all say things that we don't mean. We all say things that are foolish, that hurt other people. We might not mean to hurt other people, but if we're honest, we've said hurtful words before. And so we shouldn't take offense at what other people say to us as well. Wisdom will overlook those offenses, because we know we've done it too. All this have I proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which is far off and exceedingly deep, who can find it out? I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and even of foolishness and madness. And so even with this pursuit that he's been going on, he admits that there is still a limit to wisdom. There will always be things that we will never know, that are part of God's plan, that we just won't find out. And as we've established, given his trying to find the meaning of life thing, it wasn't found in wisdom either, because there will still be things that we will never know. And again, it's insatiable. You can't find out everything, and therefore you will always feel unsatisfied. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as band. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. And so now he's warning against the seduction of sinful women, because this traps, it destroys lives, and he that pleases God will be able to escape from her, be able to have that wisdom again to resist the temptation, but the sin is going to be taken in and bad things will happen. And if it is Solomon that wrote this, we know he had the experience, because man had a lot of wives. He would know women very well, and I'm sure he got caught in the snares at some point. Behold, this I have found, saith the preacher, counting one by one, to find out the account, which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all these have I not found. Oh, wow. Well, considering the experience that he had with women, that'd be why he married so many. He was trying to find the one, and he never really found one. So I guess, that true integrity is rare to find. He found a few faithful men, but not women. And we know he did marry a lot of pagan wives in 1 Kings. We do hear about that. So the women he chose were not the God-fearing ones, I guess. But yeah, that goes to show that maybe he wasn't as wise when it came to his choice of women. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. Wow, that's a great line. So God made man without sin. However, the way man is, we thought out many inventions like schemes and rebellions and ways to rebel against God. And not just without sin, he was actually made upright. So he was made to be faithful and obedient, but with free will, we've sought out our own rebellions, unfortunately. Wow, there you go. What an interesting chapter. I felt that was morbid in some aspects, but still a lot of wisdom here. So, in summary, he's trying to find out remedies against vanity and the meaningless. And he kind of goes into having to face mortality, having to face death. That actually leads to deeper wisdom than trying to distract yourself by just having fun and parties and eating and having a good time. He goes, actually, you'll get more wisdom if you think about death. If you go to a funeral, death is better than birth, because you have more wisdom when you think about that. He then says to have some balance. Avoid the extremes of either being too self-righteous and proud or being too wicked. The way that you stay on that straight, balanced road is the fear of God, because that's where wisdom is. And yeah, ultimately there is human corruption. He talks about his experience with women, not being a very good one, even though he had almost 1,000 wives. He obviously still never found a woman who was faithful and had the fear of the Lord, I guess. He married a lot of pagan wives. And yeah, he found a few good men, but not any women among the ones that he was looking for. And he said, but I do know this, that God made man upright. He made man faithful and obedient, but it's people that have sought their own rebellions against him through choice. So there we are, chapter 7. I pray this has blessed you. So what did you think of this chapter? What stood out to you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you think of anything else that I haven't said, drop that in the comments as well, so we can all learn and grow together. And that's it for today. Remember, Jesus loves you. Lord willing, I'll speak to you soon. And until then, have a blessed day. Bye.